Everyone thinks Berserkers and Ulfhednar were the same Viking warriors. They weren't, and the difference decided who lived and who died in Odin's warbands. The names give it away. Berserker, bear shirt, a warrior draped in bear skin, channeling raw, unstoppable power. But Ulfhedin, wolf coat, a warrior in wolf pelts, embodying something completely different. Pack tactics, cunning, and loyalty to the death. This wasn't just fashion. In 9th century Norway, your animal skin was your identity. It told every warrior on the battlefield exactly what kind of hell you were about to unleash. And here's where it gets insane. The earliest sources describe them making completely different sounds in battle. Let's break down what actually separated these warriors, because popular culture has been getting this wrong for centuries.
First, the etymology isn't debatable. Berserker comes from bjorn, bear, and serker, shirt. Wolfcoat is even clearer. Ulfr means wolf. Hevin means fur cloak. These weren't nicknames, they were job titles. But The Smoking Gun is a 9th century poem called Haraldskvæði. It describes King Harold Fairhair's elite warriors in battle, and listen to this line. The berserks were roaring, the wolf-coated warriors howling, and the irons clattering. Different verbs. The berserkers roared, grenjather, like bears. The Ulfhednar howled, emjather, like wolves. This wasn't poetic variation, it was a tactical distinction that every Viking warrior would have recognized instantly. Think about what that means. On a smoke-filled battlefield, with hundreds of warriors clashing, you could identify which type of elite warrior was coming at you by sound alone. The roar meant one thing, the howl meant another.
And the implications go deeper. Bears are solitary apex predators, pure individual power. Wolves, they hunt in coordinated packs. That's not a minor detail, that's the entire tactical playbook. But both warriors shared one terrifying ability, the Berserkergang, the berserk fit. And this wasn't Hollywood rage, this was a documented, repeatable psychophysiological state that turned men into something else entirely. The sagas describe it like a medical case study. First, intense cold and shivering, teeth chattering. Then the warrior's face would swell and turn red. Ungovernable rage would surge through the body. At the peak, they'd howl like animals, foam at the mouth and bite the iron rims of their shields. The Ynglinga saga says they became strong as bears or wild oxen, and that neither fire nor iron told upon them. But here's the cost. After the battle ended and the fury subsided, they'd collapse into days of weakness, exhaustion, and mental fog. This wasn't sustainable. It was a weapon you fired once. How did they trigger it? Forget the mushroom theory, that's been debunked. The likely answer is ritual trance induction, rhythmic chanting, war dances, hyperventilation, psychological conditioning reinforced over years. There's evidence of henbane seeds in a Viking warrior's grave from Denmark, which could have enhanced the state, but the core mechanism was psychological. They trained their nervous systems to enter a predatory trance on command. And that act of biting or discarding the shield, that was symbolic suicide. The shield represented your social identity as a civilized warrior. In casting it away, you shed your humanity. You became the beast. But none of this makes sense without understanding who these warriors served. Odin, the All-Father, the god of war, death, magic, and ecstasy. Odin's name literally comes from Ode, meaning fury, ecstasy, inspiration, madness. The Berserkergang wasn't a human achievement, it was a divine gift. These warriors became mortal vessels for Odin's own battle fury. And here's where the totems diverge. Odin had two wolves, Jerry and Freki, loyalty and ferocity incarnate. The Ulfhednar channeled that aspect of Odin, the strategic war leader commanding his wolf pack. But Odin also embodied overwhelming chaotic force, unstoppable individual power. That's what the Berserkers channeled, the bear's singular crushing might.
This tradition goes back thousands of years. Before Vikings, before Rome, Proto-Indo-European warrior brotherhoods called the Korios underwent wolf transformation rituals. Young warriors lived on society's margins as a wolf pack, raiding and hunting until they'd proven themselves worthy of rejoining civilization as men. The Ulfhednar were the living continuation of that ancient tradition. They weren't just warriors, they were shamanic initiates into a ritual practice older than written history. So what did this look like in actual combat? Because the mythology is meaningless if it didn't work. Berserkers were shock troops, vanguard assault units. You unleashed them at the start of battle to smash through the enemy's shield wall with pure, terrifying force. They fought as individuals, each one a human battering ram. But the Ulfhednar, different playbook entirely. The poem says Harold placed his trust in them. They weren't mindless. They operated as a unit, flanking maneuvers, coordinated strikes, pack tactics. And here's the crucial detail scholars like Aðalheiður Gudmundsdóttir caught. The earliest sources suggest the Ulfhednar were berserkers who had proven themselves, an elite subcategory, the best of the best. One saga says they used wolfskin cloaks for corselets, meaning they wore the wolf pelt as armor, believing it provided magical protection. That's not reckless abandon. That's calculated risk backed by fanatical belief. They were the king's inner circle, his personal warband. When you saw the wolf warriors, you knew you were facing the most experienced, most dangerous fighters in the army. So why did history forget this distinction? Because by the time the Icelandic sagas were written, 300 to 400 years later, the tradition was dead. Norway outlawed these warrior cults around 1015. Christianity was taking over. The specific rituals, the initiations, the subtle differences between bear warriors and wolf warriors, all of it faded into legend. So the 13th century writers used the terms loosely. Berserker became a catch-all for any frenzied warrior. The wolf warriors got lumped in. The distinction blurred. But the earliest sources, written when these warriors still walked the earth, they knew. The war and the howl, the bear and the wolf, two different paths to Odin's favor. The berserker was a weapon of chaos and power. But the Ulfhedin? He was something more. A member of the oldest warrior brotherhood in Indo-European history, channeling the primal fury of the wolf pack into coordinated, lethal precision. That's how mortals became legends, not by forgetting the difference, but by earning the right to wear the wolf skin.